our third keynote, takes us into the design of our future environments, and so environments are definitely connected to our societal norms and how we actually utilize our spaces, and how we live, how we connect, and how we build those spaces that really shape our societies. And so Pico Velásquez is an architect and a visionary who pioneers the concept of conscious cities. And this is like merging AI, data, immersive design, to really create and co-create ecosystems of empowerment, right? Inclusion as well as sustainability. So as the founder and CEO of VIIRA, VIIRA, Pico leads groundbreaking projects that use digital twins, immersive technologies, blockchain, and innovative cultural and financial models to really reimagine urban life. Her work asks us to see cities not simply as built environments, but as living systems, spaces that can embody compassion, regeneration, care when designed with intention. So Pico's career has spanned some of the world's most influential projects, from shaping geometry at Google's headquarters to working with Cirque du Soleil and Hard Rock to create immersive experiences, to advising on the ambitions, digital twin strategies that underpin Saudi Arabia's visionary master plans. So her insights have been shared on global stages such as COP28, South by Southwest, and the World Economic Forum, where she continues to champion the role of technology in building inclusive as well as regenerative futures. So in this keynote, Pico will help us also reimagine how cities themselves can become catalysts for human flourishing, ecosystems where technology does not alienate us from one another, but instead empowers connection, inclusion, and sustainability. It's been a pleasure to be introduced to Pico, and I look forward to actually, collaborating with her in the future. So without further ado, I want to welcome Pico Velásquez.
Thank you, Marquise, for the wonderful introduction and for having me here. I'm going to go ahead and just start sharing my screen to go through the presentation, but this is a heartfelt subject of mine, and I curated this presentation more specifically for this theme because I think it has like a beautiful intersection of technology and inspiration that we can build upon. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we see it. Beautiful.
Cool. So I'm going to do like a quick note, which is that all the images in this presentation have been produced by several incredible artists. So if anyone wants to know the credits of each of the images, available upon request. So imagine a city that breathes, where technology listens to nature, communities thrive in respect and balance, where every AI decision or every decision, economic, cultural, environmental, is rooted in interconnectedness and harmony. This is a conscious city built through Phygital Ecosystems, blending physical and digital layers, infrastructures that sense and respond in real time. This shift marks the beginning of a larger progression. Smart cities that collected data, analyzed data, responsive cities that adapted to human needs and environmental shifts, autonomous cities capable of self-regulating systems like energy, mobility, resources with minimal human intervention, to now conscious cities. Conscious cities are what I'm calling like the ultimate leap. They're self-sustaining, self-optimizing cities that think in ways parallel to biological organisms, designed not only for efficiency, but for harmony with humanity and the planet. In a conscious city, infrastructure like roads, utilities, and data systems function like mycelium networks, intelligently redistributing energy, water, goods, or information to where it needs most, balancing scarcity and abundance in real time. Cities can function like hives with decentralized decision-making, blockchain governance, and AI-enabled sensing, where every citizen contributes to the collective intelligence instead of being passive consumers. A conscious city designed as a human rainforest, diverse cultures, industries, and communities supporting one another, recycling energy and resources, regenerating rather than depleting. For centuries, we built cities that extracted from the land without giving back. We treated people as part of the machine rather than as living beings. And what has been the result? Consumerist economies that produce disposable products with little real value, designed for waste, not longevity. Land ownership systems that exclude communities, disempowering those closest to the land. Decision making driven by and for few, where speed and profit overweigh equity, inclusion, and respect, and environmental neglect, with cities that pollute more than they restore, extracting, draining, and contaminating our resources, air, soil, and water. What have we been doing wrong? We've mistaken growth for evolution. Growth is focusing on quantity, versus evolution is thriving on quality and transformation. The good news is that we already have the seeds of change. With AI, blockchain, and other emerging technologies, we can build new systems that are regenerative instead of extractive. Systems of intelligence, powered by AI, allowing urban environments to sense, learn, adapt, and anticipate. The city collects data, traffic patterns, energy, usage, air quality, etc. It adapts to immediate needs, rerouting vehicles, adjusting streetlights, reallocating resources. Systems begin to self-regulate, running transportation, energy, or waste management with minimal human oversight. And eventually, cities become living ecosystems that optimize not for efficiency or not for efficiency only, but aligning with the growth with human and ecological rhythms, minimizing emissions, protecting biodiversity, and functioning as living nodes in this planetary system. So how does this work? Self-sustaining, powered by renewable loops and regenerative infrastructure that restore more than they consume. These systems are also co-created, designed in partnership with the citizens, with the community, where AI and digital twins enable input, participatory governance, and collective decision-making. They're equitable, designing algorithms and resource flows that prioritize fairness, ensuring that opportunity, safety, and access are distributed inclusively. And planet-aligned, because it's not just about people. Growth is measured not in GDP or square footage, but in harmony with humanity and Earth's ecosystems. There's a lot of emerging projects that are happening right now that are already pointing towards this direction, and I'm going to name a few. So Atlas AI is a startup using satellite imagery and AI to map poverty and economic opportunities in underserved regions, enabling target aid distribution. It helps governments and NGOs in Africa and Asia allocate resources more equitably, reducing biases in development planning. Power Ledger, an Australian company enabling peer-to-peer renewable energy trading via blockchain. This allows households, especially in remote areas, to sell excess solar power. This democratizes clean energy access, reduces carbon emissions while promoting economical inclusion for off-grid communities. Arat, which is actually one of my startups, I'm going to present two of my startups very quickly here, is a non-extractive gold ETF. So it's an exchange-traded fund tokenizing unmined gold reserves, meaning we don't take it out of the ground, to unlock liquidity and value without environmental destruction. It empowers landowners, governments, and communities in resource-rich regions by enabling equitable wealth distribution, global market access, and sovereign finance resilience. EOS, which is another one of my startups, is a decentralized AI network, a co-created intelligence built by and for all. So a little bit different from how the AIs that we're seeing right now that are very centralized and competing against each other. Here, it incentivizes user contribution and transparent token rewards. So essentially, we give everyone, part of the company for building the company, for building the data, for being part of this collective infrastructure of data. By incorporating the voices, data, and perspectives of all cultures, ethnicities, and communities, EOS nurtures a more holistic intelligence for an inclusive digital ecosystem. An example of part of this ecosystem, now that we're in the topic of Latin American indigenous culture, is indigenous wisdom. Indigenous communities have long understood what it means to live in respect for the land. Their principles of non-extraction, reciprocity, honoring life are the foundation of sustainability. So just imagine training on AI not only on Silicon Valley databases, but on the indigenous cultural heritage and knowledge. And you can imagine this being in every part of the world. So what is our vision? Conscious cities that thrive on respect, equity, and inclusion of the environment, animals, and its people, non-distraction, non-extraction, non-destruction. I got my American accent there, kind of can't tell the difference. Balanced ecosystems where every stakeholder, from the soil to the government and its citizens, thrive together. It'll require collective action, no doubt, from governments, business, communities, and individuals to shift away from the economies of waste that we currently have and towards these economies of trust, dignity, responsibility, and collaboration. But together with the wisdom of the past and the tools of the present, we can create a world that sustains life, but most importantly, that honors it. Thank you. I think I went really fast, but yes. And this is a bit about me for those that want to reach out or, yeah, in any collaboration, in a collaborative spirit or research spirit, I'm always happy to work along other people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Would love to open up for a Q&A. And that really, your talk really kind of got my mind moving when you're talking about indigenous and ancestral
Mm,
traditions. Um, and how indigenous wisdom has treated the earth not as an asset or to
mm,
be extracted, but as a sacred vault of wealth, right, holding value in
mm.
ecosystems, biodiversity, waters, soils. And so in this sense the earth is the original ledger, right? So I'd love for you to talk more about the aspect of you know when you talk about compassion, it's like, you're compassionate about things that you give value to, right? And
Mm.
so when you're talking about the earth as a store of vault, or, utilizing gold as an ETF, or like untapped resources, which the earth actually holds many of that. I would love for you to kind of just talk on that a little bit more and how that connects to compassion when it comes to, technology and what we could utilize that for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that the easiest one, and that's the one we're starting with, is gold, just because non-extracted gold still holds the value of gold, right? So we can have, we're calling it like an in-ground gold index, so like an IGI, essentially can be traded very similarly to gold right now. It's a one-on-one comparison, so that's kind of easy to choose. Do you want to go to one that's like sustainable, doesn't damage the planet, doesn't, dislocate communities, but, one that like really empowers the earth and the people, or the one that's, doing all these destructive things and, processes that are not really aligned with, a more inclusive ecosystem. But when it comes to projects that aren't necessarily like that easy to evaluate, so we have projects of like land conservation, right? Um, it's a little bit more difficult to say like, how can we prove that conserving the land is more valuable than destroying it, right? Like we have a project in the Amazon of 340,000 hectares for conservation. And you can imagine the amount of developers or even people that want to, tear down this incredible land to turn it into like cow farms. It's just like the meat industry is like its own thing. Like I'm vegan here, so like it's its own thing. Like at the scale of 7 billion people, it's almost impossible to sustain. And because the value of the Amazon land is so cheap, then, it's more profitable to tear it down, right? So one of the things that we've been working on with ARA is that we're starting with gold, which is the one that's like obviously more, more like financially, equivalent to what we know right now. But the idea is that we have to start thinking of value in a more holistic way. Value cannot just be financial value. There's ecological value, there's cultural value, there's historic value, right? There's all these things that if we consider the world as, as what it is, an entire ecosystem, not just isolated fragments, all of this holds an important, collective add, right? So if you destroy something here, it ends up coming back in another way, right? Because you either have to pay it in some way or another, right? And in a way, I think carbon credits are like a way of solving, but not really solving the core issue, but it's still an initiation of solving, right? It's like these companies, corporates are still destroying the planet somewhere else, but then they're buying the credits to compensate. Sure, that's like a transition, but eventually, we want to get to the place where the value is actually being assessed through its like its entire lifespan and its effect on the planet, right? And with that, we're calling it rights. And with that, essentially, when you start trading these assets, whether you're trading conserved land or you're trading, non-extractive gold, you're trading coffee or whatever it is, like these different assets that we're going to put on chain, you see not only the financial value of it, but also the ecological value, the cultural value, and all these different things, right? So we get like a more comprehensive understanding of what it is that we're trading. And I do believe that as the planet wakes up, right? And I think that's like a word that is used a lot sometimes without much context, but there is an awakening. Like I have felt it, a lot of people have felt it. We are all becoming more conscious, more connected to ourselves, to the world, to each other, all of this, yeah, like levels of consciousness is about it. Yes, all of these levels of consciousness. We're no, we realize that we cannot be destroying the outside without it affecting us directly. If you want to think of it from like a very egotistical standpoint, only about yourself, it does come back, right? But if you want to think about it from like a more holistic or like even more comprehensive, is that all of this experience is one single being, it's one single experience, right? So hurting something external is it's essentially just hurting yourself, right? So I think there's something here, whether it's through blockchain specifically, because you asked about that, of like how do we assert value and how do we change the definition of value that I think is very important. Yeah. And then like all the incredible things that blockchain brings, immutability, transparency, fractionalized ownership, the fact that, people can participate at multiple levels with $1, with $1 million, you can trade at any level, but essentially it becomes an open economy for everyone that wants to participate.
I
Yeah.
love that. Are there any questions from the panelists or any of the attendees? You know, raise your hand, or if not, I have plenty of questions that we can get into. But feel free to actually type in, or ask your question. You can unmute yourself and ask your question as well. Um, and just to kind of continue the conversation, when you're talking about like the individual kind of reflective aspect that actually reflects out into the society, that you kind of have to have some self-awareness before you can actually affect change outwardly. What
Mm,
kinds of data do you think should a conscious city prioritize collecting, or
mm,
avoid collecting for that matter, to kind of
mm,
remain ethical and trustworthy or compassionate? What does that data set look like?
mm. Um, yeah, I think when it comes to this is a sensitive subject, right? Because data sovereignty is a very, very crucial topic that we should all be very wary of, right? What data is yours versus what belongs to the city? The city is the government, or is it a decentralized city, right? Who owns this data? What is it using for? Could it be used for surveillance? Could we end up like in a very like dystopian situation where, there's like a map out of who you are, in a way that can be used against you versus being used for you, right? So I think these topics right now, and I mean, Palantir and all these companies are like going in like a not so great direction when it comes to this. So I think it has to be treated with a lot of delicacy. And that first point is data sovereignty, right? That every person has to own their own data. We currently don't. People are not even aware that they have data somehow. It's like where does your social media data go, your Gmail data go, like all the calls that you have, all the chats that you have, where does it go? Who uses it? Where has it been like in some way tagged to you? Whether that's to train all these AI models, which it has been trained on all of our data, explicitly without even, without even our consent, because it's just being like they're all in like legal wars right now, like scraping the internet, taking all the data, creating these models, right? But there's this need for us to, as individuals, to be able to own our own data. It's like, owning your body, owning your space, owning your digital identity, etc. And that's something that is also a part of EOS, when, the AI company that I'm working on. It's like the essential point. And I think there's a lot of people that are working on this as well because it's a very pressing subject. But then that's where it comes to like what information, what data is tagged specifically to you. Like what is Marquis data, what is Pico data versus what is generalized data that can be used for the modeling of these cities, right? Because the problem is when it comes to be specific. I think being part of a data set that can inform a city at a large scale is important, right? You need to know how traffic moves. You need to know like if something is, if there's any types of like limitations that are happening, like how can or challenges that need to be resolved, like data is great at being able to, give exact, information for that. But when it comes as like putting all the names as like, oh, who was in that protest, or there's like fine limits, right? Like you do want to know who was the individual that crossed the red light or that, ran over a dog or a person, but you don't want to know where they're at, what they spend, where they live, what their habits are, to such specificity that it can eventually become like a mass manipulation, right? Which unfortunately already happens in a lot of countries. We all know which ones, so no need to name them. But in a lot of other countries, including the US, are going through a process of even I mean, some of the latest like White House conversations were around data ownership of decentralized companies, right? So it is a very strict subject that I think I think the best way to resolve it is a combination of sovereignty and decentralization. It cannot belong to anyone. I mean, it belongs to the self, but when it comes to companies, it cannot belong to singular companies. It has to belong to a network and managed by a network, and there has to be different levels of management and yeah, and decision making as to like how that data is being used ethically. Yeah, it's a
That's
very
so
long
important.
response.
No, that's brilliant. One of the things, and what's particular to the work that I do is, really understanding how do we incorporate and initiate indigenous protocols into AI,
Mm,
right? And that looks, something of understanding that there is temporal time, right? So we're talking about temporal sovereignty, where time is something that actually has, or even the rights to refuse, right? That a protocol will not be activated until like certain things happen, like whether it be a seasonal transition, whether it be, salmon actually coming back to farm. And so like these more indicators of what the earth is doing that will actually be validations for things moving forward. And so I guess, with that, how can cities integrate ancestral knowledge and kind of this
mm.
cultural heritage into AI, that enables the design for future resiliency in cities?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I've been thinking with EOS as well is when it comes to decentralized AI, I'll explain a little bit more how this works. So essentially, each person or each company or each community holds a data set, right? Whether it's like their daily input or when it comes to be to a company, there's a lot of like financial marketing, like a lot of movement that happens, in at the different levels of the data sets, right? Or the different levels in which data is being aggregated. When it's fed into an AI, it's fed through a federated learning system, which means that it's taking on the learnings, but it's not tagging it to you, right? It's anonymized, but it tags you in the back end process to be able to then give you rewards for how it's being trained in the sense that the quality of your data, it's not quantity of data, it's the quality of data, how much it improves the original model is going to give you a set of reward tokens, but also how many times your data has been used for the research, the search engine, etc., for others, right? So you'll be getting like, little snippets of like token rewards every time that something is used similarly. Because we enter into like these weighted pools of like, how these models or these LLMs are being created, right? So the concept is that, the indigenous community, whether it's the individual or the community itself, feeds the data to the LLM or like to the ecosystem. The ecosystem, puts it inside of like a specific vault that, it's not going to be, it's going to be protected, but it still tags it so that however it is being used, you're getting retributed for it, right? But then it creates like these layers of hierarchies of information so that instead of creating like everything being homogeneously, being, the information being like weighted homogeneously, it can also be tagged by groups to understand and to respect different cultures, different religions, different political perspectives, etc. I think the idea Valeria mentioned this a little bit too. Like we don't want to fall into the trap of becoming like a like a homogeneous system, right? Where like all the information is kind of guiding us in the same direction, and all of a sudden we all become the same, like bananas. It's like no, that's not the point, right? That's not resilient at all, and it's also like not interesting to not have like a diverse world, right? So I see someone like laughing with an emoji, or is that you? But but yeah, I think it's like how do we create a system that helps everyone grow, have the flexibility to go in any direction that they want, but still able to maintain, whatever it is, the principles, values, heritage, whatever it is that they want to maintain as a culture, as an individual, right? I think that's also very important. I hope that answered the question. Oh, I can't hear you, Marquise.
So one last question before we let you go. This has been absolutely valuable, but in your perspective, what does a fully realized conscious city look like, say in 2050,
Mm,
right? And what role will AI
mm,
play in
mm.
sustaining? Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned it quite a bit during the presentation, right? Of like what it means to have like a system that can regenerate itself, that can evaluate itself, that it's not just like processing data for optimization purposes or efficiency purposes, but that is adapting, based on its needs, its resources, like allocating things where it needs to. The more it is closer to natural systems, probably the most intelligent, if you think about it. Natural systems, from our DNA to mycelial networks to anything in nature, has millions, if not billions, of years of evolution. So, they're farther up the line of like how they manage data themselves. Like everything is data if you want to, be able to tag it. But even the way that, proteins move inside of the system, or like, from nutrients, etc. Like how organisms of cells work are probably like, the most intelligent ways that things can happen. So if we can do that to a city, like that would be incredible. But you asked another question and I slightly forgot it. One was what would be the
Yeah, just kind of what was like, I guess, what does the conscious city look like in 2050, and what role does AI play in sustaining it?
and what role does AI play? Okay, yeah. So, I mean, AI, it's the digital infrastructure. Like nothing is going to be created without AI. It just wouldn't make any sense. It would be too slow. I mean, before we had like, traditional code, then we had generative code, genetic code, now AI. I mean, there's no turning back just because, it just wouldn't be very efficient, right? So, yeah, everything that you have that has to do with data itself, so like managing, transferring, optimizing, moving, like anything that has to do with data is going to be done with AI. So the question is, what is the AI behind it, right? Because, like, I mean, I use Grok for different things and OpenAI for different things. They have personalities, They've literally been modeled after their founders. It's like if I need something like very concise and like research heavy, I'm like, Grok, give it to me. I need something that's like a little bit like more poetic and like understands even spirituality for some of these questions. OpenAI, Grok wouldn't even understand it, right? And that's also the problem of like creating like these, centralized like singular AIs that are potentially going to be able to like solve things for everyone, right? Because it just gives like a very specific perspective, right? So I think it's very important that whatever is going to be guiding these large, digital infrastructure, that's going to go from, managing, power resources to, coding your robot, like your in-house robot, to, your self-driving car. I mean, it's essentially everything, so it's very important how these AIs are built. Yeah.
And to close us off, what are some of your final thoughts that you would like to leave us with? I know you're going to be joining us for the panel,
Mm,
but what are some of the thoughts around compassion, right? And like, how do we
mm,
actually integrate compassion into the things that we
Yeah.
do, the designs that we make, the cities that we build? How does that actually play into the larger ecosystem?
Yeah, I think what's very important, and I'll say that like in parallel to compassion, is that we are all shaping this world. There isn't like the builders and the non-builders. If you are passive, you are passively shaping the world. You are a consumer, you're passively shaping it because you are the one that is building something. Otherwise, that product would not sustain, right? It would not exist if there weren't any consumers, right? So I think awareness of how everything that we do is shaping this system, shaping this world, shaping this experience at every level at which it exists is the first thing. And then through that awareness, comprehending that other people are in their process too, and that we would all want to have the most enjoyable time while we're alive. Like nobody wants to have a bad time here, right? So like let's just try to make it fun for everyone. Like why don't we just do that? I think there's just like a lot of resistance into thinking that we can't or that for some reason because others didn't know, there's like these blockages. But in reality, we could just create something good. And if something good is then bought by a lot of people that want something good, then there you go. You got a product that works and that is backed and is scalable. So that's it. That's literally it. So like instead of, trying to like trick people into buying things that are unnecessary just for the sake of creating like a consumerist economy, based on like lower chakra desires, it's like why don't we go to something higher and just like, start creating things that are like good for everyone. And I think compassion is the sense of like realizing that you and everyone else are just the same. Like we are all the same, you know. And I would include animals and plants there too. Like we all here want to live and we all want to live the best life. So
Thank you for your talk. It was really informative, and I know there's so much more to actually discuss. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Some of your ideas are, all your ideas are very needed in this space, not only in a Latin America context, but a global context.
yeah.
And so, just I encourage you to continue your work, and I'm sure you will. And ultimately, it's needed and it's valued. So I appreciate you, Pico, for joining us,
Thank
and we appreciate
you.
that your talk.
Well, thank you. We'll see you later.
Definitely. Wonderful. What an amazing, informative talk, on our built space, on our environment, but also how do we connect our individuality to the larger spaces of our environment.